Good afternoon, guys. Today we're going to be talking about production functions and characteristics specifically in the short run. Production functions. The production function is basically a mathematical expression of the maximum output given input. This means if you have X amount of labors, we are going to get X amount of production. Now, this is our production function in which Q represents the quantity, L represents the quantity of labor, Q represents the quantity of output, and K represents the capital. I use the example cups of lemonade because these are all factors of production for the businesses of cups of lemonade and selling lemonade. You need lemon, sugar, water, labor, and time. In this picture, we can see that there is a relationship that goes into the production of goods and services, and in the short run, we always have to hold one factor constant. These inputs are what goes into the production of lemonade, and if we hold technology, capital, and equipment constant, we would be considering this in the short run. Labor is considered the only variable factor in the short run. In the case of a pizzeria, that would include the cooks and the wait staff. Key terms. So a fixed input. A fixed input is an input that cannot be adjusted. A variable input is an input that can be adjusted in a given period. Short run is a period of time in which inputs are fixed, and the long run is which all inputs can be adjusted. So here we have a graph, inputs and outputs, marginal product and average product. So as you can see, as we get closer to 10, the marginal product of labor increases by a smaller amount, and we even go into a negative deficit. Because of this, we can tell that the labor increases and also the output increases. But after time, increases become smaller and smaller because of labor production. So here we have a maximum worker at 10, and the extra output achieved from the addition of a single unit of labor is the marginal product of labor, which in this case is the additional worker. So in this case, the additional worker is the marginal product of labor. Hence, given the equation, and because of this, it's also important to consider average product of labor. The average product of labor is how much output per worker is being produced at each level of employment. So this is given that if one hires more workers, eventually the output will be shortly decreasing. So one needs to calculate what would be your maximum efficiency for your business. Now remember, in the short run, short period is where at least one input is fixed. For example, capital is fixed and labor is a variable because you can always add more workers, but you have to keep the same amount of capital. In the short run, a firm cannot add capital from a new assembly line, but it can add workers. So for example, maybe adding such as an overnight shift or maybe rescheduling something can make your business more productive and more efficient. So now we go into the marginal product of labor. The marginal product of labor is the extra output achieved in adding a single unit of labor. So that comes to our equation. Now this is the change in quantity over the change in labor. This is derived by demand, and it increases in revenue because of an additional laborer, but it declines as more labor is added, like we saw in the chart. So for example, the firms will hire as long as the wage is less than the marginal product of labor, because that's where you get profit. If it costs more to maintain a worker than what he produces, then you're at a deficit and your business is not being efficient. For example, the janitorial business. Now you might have janitors getting paid $30 an hour, for example, and others getting paid $10 an hour. Why? You might ask yourself why. Maybe it's because the janitor that's getting paid $30 an hour has more demand in his job than the other one. One might be cleaning up very sensitive equipment, which needs to be disposed of a certain way, and the other janitor might just be picking up a piece of napkin or recycle something simple, in which it's not really much sensitivity or attention to detail that goes into it. So these are all factors of production and why one janitor might be getting paid more than the other. And remember, increase in revenue because of additional labor is going to decline as labor is added. Now we go on to the next slide, which brings us over to the average product of labor, which is how much output a worker could do at a level of employment. Now here we have quantity over labor, so we don't take the average. We just take quantity over labor and divide it by themselves. Now, for us to solve this equation here, all we have to do is derive the equation, get the derivative, set it equal to 0, and solve for L. And that's where you're gonna see that your marginal product equals your average product of labor. And from that, we can derive our short run total product curve. Now, as you can see here, the lower graph measures labor using a production process in the horizontal axis, and then the average and marginal productivity of labor are measured in our vertical axis. So this gives us the function of labor. Here we see that the quantity of output grows until the growth rate decreases, which starts to decrease somewhere along here. And after a certain point, the output will grow slowly, and when the growth rate of quantity starts to decrease, average productivity starts to drop. And that's what we're looking at towards C, that our total product of labor is actually at a decline. Now, from this, we can say that the average product of labor is the same as the slope of the ray from the origin that intersects the total product curve. And the marginal product of labor is the change in output over the change in labor, which is the same as the slope of the product curve itself. Very important that here we see at C, the law of marginal product diminishing. And it basically states that if a form increases one input and the other inputs are kept constant, then the marginal product of that input will start to get smaller. So that's what we see here. When we're going from A to B, we see an increase, and then we see still an increase, but a steady decrease in our increases. And that's it.